Hello, welcome everybody. So we've got a quorum here now. I was kind of waiting to make sure everybody was joining. Welcome to a sentence correction workshop here with Veritas Prep. I'm Brian, longtime instructor here, and you study the same test for a long time. You pick up on a few things. So want to talk a little bit about, usually with any live events, people will start clicking right about on time. So I'll do a little bit of a slow build until everybody has an opportunity to get situated and settled. Here are a few things we're going to be talking about here. Just some big core strategies for sentence correction that should help you master. I think so often it's not a matter of knowledge with sentence correction. It's more a question of prioritization, knowing what to look for, all those kind of things. So we've got a few things that really should make this a whole lot easier for you. Before I get into all that, it's just such a cool honor to be able to talk to the world. I'm just outside of Los Angeles here in Santa Monica, where it's about noon here. I just want to know, where's everybody checking in from? That'll also help in making sure that people can see, hear, all those kind of things. So use that chat. Awesome. All right, Orlando's the first to check in, so thank you. A couple of sunshine states in the house right now. San Diego, cool. California, very well represented. Just down the coast, that's awesome. We almost always get multiple continents represented. There we go. We got another country right now. We got Montreal, we got New York, we got Jacksonville, we got Toronto. So nice. We've got good U.S.-Canada mix. Newfoundland, that's awesome. Gotta love the Newfies. I grew up near the U.S.-Canada border in Michigan, so got a lot of CBC telecasted to learn a lot about Canada. Newfoundland's cool. Mumbai, all right, awesome. We've got multiple continents represented. Everybody else, chime them in if you've got them. Would love to see where people are joining us from. It's just something cool to be able to talk about at the dinner table later, the fact that I got to talk to people from around the world. And what's really cool is we've got an opportunity to absolutely maximize your score on sentence correction. So give you a little bit of a preview of what we're going to go through. A couple things here. We've got 4 concepts and corresponding practice questions to go through. The other thing we're going to do here, awesome, we got another India, we got Budapest, so we're 3 continents now. This is great. The other thing we're going to do is every one of these questions has statistics. They've appeared at some point or another on our practice tests, so we can show you, hey, this is difficult, or look what points you're leaving on the board if you're not prioritizing correctly, thinking the right way. So that's our goal. We're going to have you guys go through some problems. So the fact you're participating here is great. You can type in your answers. Really want you guys to learn by doing with me here. Things we're going to talk about is, one is your greatest asset on sentence correction. I don't want to oversell it. I don't want to give away the takeaway on this one, so I won't say too much about it. But I will say my hypothesis is most people do sentence correction at least somewhat wrong. And if they reframe their mind about doing it on your own terms and not just reacting to what the test puts in front of you, you can be so much more efficient. It's kind of fun. You save time. You know right answers. You're not just kind of hoping to get them. We're talking about the idea that the whole sentence matters. Another thing people struggle with a lot is you just see people start to fixate where the underlined portion is and miss obvious clues that they're putting for you far away from the underline. So, I think the maximum number of words they can put on these is 56. Sometimes they have 50 words, 52 words, and only 12 of them are underlined. And those who really get it will look and say, there's a reason they wrote all those. I always like, we talk to people from GMAT. I always like to talk about, hey, you guys don't get paid by the word when you write these. You don't pay your authors by the word. And they always kind of laugh. It's like, so if they wrote extra, it's for a reason, and that's important to know. Also want to show how hard questions punish people who just scan. There's certain strategies, techniques that can get you to a 500, can get you to 550, but once they get a little bit harder, that's when really meaning starts to get into play. We'll show you what we mean by that and give you things to look for to make sure you're slowing down in that. And then I want to show you guys just a couple of free points that people don't take advantage of. And it's once you've seen a technique we'll show you here, when you see that pop up on test day, you've at least eliminated 2 or 3 answers very quickly, very confidently, and there's just free points that can anytime you have an opportunity to turn your brain off a little bit, not really overanalyze, you're quick, you're efficient, you're getting a question right, that's a great position to be in. So here's our roadmap. I want you guys, as we go through these problems, participate, really try your best on those, throw your answers in the poll, or in the chat, and I'll show you poll results from practice tests. Here here's one of my favorite examples. If you guys have done any of these sessions, this one comes up a lot, so some of you may have seen this before. Phenomenal problem for setting up what your greatest asset is on sentence correction. So what I want to do, I'm going to give you guys about 90 seconds on each of these so that, even if it's not enough time to finish, theoretically you should be doing them in between a minute and 90 seconds on sentence corrections. You have more time for reading comprehension, critical reasoning, the longer prompts that are full paragraphs, full essays. So let's go about 90 seconds. I'll step off so you guys have full visibility of just the questions, and then I want to hear your answers, show you the world's answers from the practice test, and see what we can learn from this one. All right, so we can get to work on this. While people are finishing up, let me ask this. How many of you guys have seen this one before? It's definitely on the YouTube channel, so everything else is pretty, brand new content. I just think this is such a great problem for framing your mind. So those who've been combing our YouTube channel for a while may have had a little bit of a leg up on this one. Whoops, covered up a little bit of what was going on there. What's fascinating about this one, I think everybody in our group picked one of the two most popular answers. I think not always, but on a lot of these questions, you can tell that there's one answer they want you to pick, and then the right answer that they also want you to pick. It's not like they're trying to make you get them wrong, but it's like here's where they want to, punish those who aren't thinking. Here's the trap. If you're not thinking critically, if you don't get it, here's the one they kind of want you to pick, and then here's the reward for those who are really thinking critically. Awesome, maybe that's at least somebody's honest. They've seen it before. So our stats may be a little bit biased from that one. Here are the worldwide stats on this one. A is correct. People love C. And what I really want to get across on this one, now that you guys have been a part of it, kind of see about how you were, if you were between those two or what your thought process was. Almost always, the difference is which decision point did people pick on, right? So when people pick C, it's because as they read through this one, they go, Kant's writings, while praised by many philosophers, etc., are characterized by sentences so dense and convoluted as to pose. Like, I don't know, the way I usually say that is so X that Y, right? It's so hot outside that we turned on the air conditioning. Any of those so X that Y is really the construction people tend to look for. So they go, I don't necessarily love that. It doesn't strike the ear. They go down and they see C and they go, so dense that they posed and go, yeah, that's the one I would use. And so they make their decision. Anybody that picks C, be honest, or was really flirting with it, the decision people tend to make if they pick C is they go from left to right. They don't love what's going on here. The savvy test taker says, hey, they can throw a whole bunch of different sentence structures, idiomatic expressions, those kind of things at me. The core of this test is the same handful of rules over and over again. It's subject-verb agreement, it's pronoun singular versus plural agreement, it's parallelism in a list, it's verb tense. And so they see down the right-hand side, they go pose, present tense, or kind of indicative kind of a verb, posed, past tense. They go, wait a second, that's way more actionable. That's a decision they ask me to make over and over again. Then they look at the rest of the sentence. They go, wait a second, they are characterized currently by sentences so dense and convoluted as opposed to significant hurdle for many readers who study currently. Hey, everything in this sentence is ongoing. It would be bizarre to say we currently characterize this guy's writings by sentences that used to. Past tense posed is, that means the action's over. They don't pose a challenge anymore. They used to, they don't anymore. Well, then why do we currently characterize his writings that way? These people currently study his works. Did they all get over that hurdle at the same time? Posed past tense is illogical. And so those who wait a little bit and say, I'm going to prioritize the decision I'm good at. I'm really good at subject-verb agreement, verb tense, pronoun agreement, parallelism in a comparison or a list or something. Hey, I'm just going to keep doing what I do well over and over again. They get rewarded for that one. This is sort of a classic structure that the GMAT loves to put in. There's two different ways of saying something. So dense and convoluted as to, so dense and convoluted that they. Both of those are right. It's C is a little more familiar, a little bit more common, and so what are they trying to do here? Well, they know we read left to right, top to bottom, right? And so they give us something toward the earlier answer choices, all the way on the left-hand side of the choices, that's going to strike our ears a little bit funny, that's going to seem a little bit different. And if we see the difference, go, oh, they fixed it. Well, here, give a couple of takeaways on this one. So make sure our pyramid gets up there. I've always loved this. One of the owners of Veritas Prep Chat actually came up with this a few years ago, and I love that he goes, yeah, GMAT test writers, they're corrupt mechanics. What does a corrupt mechanic or a dishonest mechanic do? It tells you something's broken that wasn't, fixes it, and then charges you for it, right? And so in that case, here, A wasn't broken. The test says, yeah, we'll fix that for you. So dense and convoluted as to, cool, we'll fix that for you. That's like saying, oh, you need an air filter replacement when you get your oil changed. Well, maybe you don't. They're always going to try to sell it to you because it's extra money for them. It's something that wasn't broken. They fix that and they break something else for you. And that's that difference with C. And so the greatest decision advantage you have, your asset, is you determine the order you do it. You don't let them dictate to you, okay, well, it looks like the first difference I see between A and B is this. I guess I have to make that decision. The best test takers look at it and say, I'm not sure about that decision. Here we go. This is one I'm good at. And they prioritize the stuff they do over and over and over again. And in doing so, they don't have to make the hard decisions. And not to belabor with story time, but I had a student a few years back now, this guy Will, who had been to one of these sessions and actually called and like, hey, can I, we were both in Los Angeles, can I work with this guy, Brian? I took another class and I'm stuck around, it was 590 was his most recent score. Maybe this will work. I just want to work on sentence correction. It was funny, the first lesson we went to, he's going through some pretty hard problems and sort of like testing me out. He's like, well, Miss Jaron, almost like a OG Ninja kind of a question, actually. I'll hit that one in a second. It's like, well, I think this is right. I think you should have used the gerund here. I don't think you should have. And there's certain times I'm like, dude, I don't speak your language, man. And he kind of looked at me almost condescendingly. He's like, why? Like, you're an expert on this. How do you not know, whatever principle that he had read deep in a grammar book somewhere? And I go, because you never should have been considering answer choice C because of the verb tense. Like, I don't look at those weird decisions you're making because you can get really good at this test doing the same thing over and over again. And we kind of went through the problems he had been worried about. I'm like, here, you should have never been considering this one because of that. You should have never been. And he just kind of looked at it and was like, wow. It's almost like he had to unlearn some really dense, weird grammar he had been trying to focus on. Ended up getting a 700 like 6 weeks later. Put some work into it, did a lot of sentence correction. 700 went to Wharton, and so much of it was just this. It was like, hey, we've got it. You don't need to make every possible decision. We have to train you to make the decisions that matter and prioritize. And then some of these decisions you never have to make. And Ninja, let me go back to the question here because I like the point you brought up. I don't think it's redundant necessarily. Redundancy, another one is in terms of your greatest asset, or prioritize the decisions. People over-prioritize redundancy and pronoun reference. I think if this were posed present tense, I think it's fine. It's not it's not a case of the shorter one is always there. No, it's not. I mean, what else would be posing that challenges? It's sentences so dense and convoluted that the that kind of calls right back to what are you describing? That's used as modifying the sentences. And so that's one, I'm not going to go 100% on that one. I would say I would never make that decision because you don't need to, right? And I think that's the other big thing here is don't prioritize your decisions. What I've seen is when people worry about redundancy first or pronoun reference errors, they get a lot of questions wrong they should have gotten right because those tend to be, it's like Jai, your question is they ambiguous. Do you know what it refers back to? Way more often than not, even if there are several nouns in a sentence, there's some structure that makes it clear what the pronoun is. Otherwise, you could never use a pronoun in a sentence that had more than one noun in it, right? And so there are times pronoun reference, and that kind of gets to, your greatest asset thing here is, especially if you get questions wrong where you thought that, don't just take my word for it now, you will find if that's your primary decision point, you get a lot of problems wrong that you should have gotten right. And it's because there are sentence structures there that make it, if it's clear what the pronoun refers to, here the fact that is modifying only those sentences, you may be going back to, what about the writings? That's plural. There's a lot more nuance with pronoun reference and redundancy that people don't see. And that's really the lesson here is if you focus on the stuff that is 100% every time, if you've got a positive modifier at the start of a sentence, it's right around. Whereas at the end of a sentence, modifiers get a little more leeway. And so, I think that's why this lesson is so critical to people is you're learning 30 or 40 different grammar rules or sentence correction rules. There are like 7 of them you can do every time. There are others that have more nuance to them, right? It's like the English language they say is the hardest one to learn. It's I before E, except after C, all the different exceptions to the rule. People spend way too much time playing with the exception to the rule ones. There are the rules that have so many exceptions. Just knock out. If it's an illogical timeline, kill that one. If it's singular versus plural, kill that one. And you don't have to make those decisions. So good questions. It actually kind of plays into this lesson of just, I've been studying sentence correction, doing sentence correction. I've done every official problem that's been released over the last 20 years. And those decisions are often hard. They're often false decision points. It's how they, hide the right answer. They make it seem like, well, there's multiple pronouns or multiple nouns. Do I really know what that pronoun is? You should never have been considering that sentence anyway. Anyway, that's why if you're asking those questions, I think this lesson is pretty helpful. Know what those core things are. Beginning of sentence modifiers, subject-verb agreement and verb tense, pronouns, parallelism in a list or a comparison. Those things are pretty darn binary. You can always hit those. End of a sentence modifiers, pronoun reference, redundancy, something brought up. Those have more gray areas to them. And so just focus on the ones first that you can crush. And you've got a huge competitive advantage there. So with that, we'll give you a little bit, some of these title slides or titles on slides will give you a little bits of hints. If you've got follow-up questions on those, follow those over and I can hit them in chat or try to get them in a little bit. Here's another good example. Again, we're going through pretty difficult questions. These are all, 650 level or above. So I want to make sure we get some good takeaways out of these. Let's take another 90 seconds here to attack this one. And if you get a little bit of a hint here, that may give you a leg up. We'll talk about what we can learn from this one in just a second. All right, so great participation in the poll there. So thanks everybody for throwing in your answers. It was cool here, actually. I always like seeing when, whoops, let me get this out of the way, when sort of patience is rewarded, right? Always my favorites as a teacher are where the quick answers might be a little bit wrong, and you can kind of see when people started to really, really attack and think critically. So awesome work, really, by everybody here. Did you guys see what was far away from the underline? What is the big takeaway for the whole sentence matters? Because that's really the lesson on this one. Is if you're kind of going through, Northern Pike are, the Northern Pike is, you could be going back and forth between these and just kind of think, well, it's fish. Like fish is the singular and the plural, right? The fish is, that's one fish. The fish are, that's multiple fish. If they use nouns that could go either way, they've got to give you clues somewhere else. And awesome. Ninja, Devin, you guys nailed it there all the way at the end. The big lesson on this one is the whole sentence matters if they have the first portion underlined and then ramble on for a little while. I'll show you a handful of things you want to look out for. Pronouns are great, or connector words. If you see and or, those words, a lot of times things have to be parallel. You go far away from the underline, words that signal time. If you got a date or an after or a before or a since, if you see those things far from the underline, they a lot of times control things here. So like I said, they don't get paid by the word when they write these. What happens is if they want to go, hey, how do I make this hard? Well, I know everybody's going to focus on the answer choices in the underline, so I'll put something that's like critical, but I'll put it far away and dare them to notice. And here, like I said, you had a little bit of a hint, so it wasn't exactly a perfect experiment. A lot of times people miss this one. Let me show you guys the statistics on it. And actually, you guys probably did have a little bit of a hint because we had a lot of A's versus C's, which is pretty cool. Normally, people don't go for C, and I'll talk about that distinction. People are here in the A versus B, the is versus are. It's a subject-verb agreement type thing. Those are the most popular answer choices on this one. And really, it's a, hey, that there all the way at the end, that one should give it away. Now, so we know it's got to be an R or an R. And I want to talk about the distinction in between that one. And actually, I love, Ninja, I love your comment there. Thought it was a bit odd. Here, so I'll tell you, this one comes from the New York Times. This is a New York Times sentence in their Science and Technology edition or something like that. And what's great is, so actually the GMAT, one of the sources they use the New York Times, The Economist, and a couple other really well written and edited publications to find sentences that are a bit odd, right? And so they strike your ears like, that's weird, I don't know. And that's hard problems come from those kind of publications. It's not like somebody, I think it's the ACT organization writes sentence correct GMAT stuff, and they're in Des Moines, Iowa. It's not like somebody's sitting there kind of, what do I know about today? They go find weird sentences in the wild. And so, if one, it's not like the best study strategy, but it's not, if you're going to read something, you could do worse than reading the New York Times on a Sunday, and then every once in a while looking and just going, that's a weird sentence. Let me go investigate that, because those kind of complex structures tend to be there. So, awesome, Ninja. Yeah, exactly. With C, what's weird here is you've got are, they are propelled and emerging. Are propelled means like that's like a thing, that's like a knowledge about them. Like they have fins, they are propelled by. Emerging is a current event, whereas are propelled by kind of talks about what their general habits are. It's more about the species and not, hey, these current couple of them are currently emerging. And so it mixes up the verb tense a little bit here. It's really one of the major problems with C. With A, what's weird, what strikes the ear strange is Northern Pike are a cunning and aggressive fish. But if you ever watch Animal Planet or Planet Earth documentaries, that's a normal way of speaking about species and animals. So again, they find sentences that'll strike your ear a little bit odd in places where the context fits it. And so you've got to be able to look for some of those clues. Hard questions, they make you think. It's almost like it's more reading comprehension. We're going to see that in a second. You got to roll up your sleeves and go to work a little bit. And so that's that distinction between A and C. You can get away with stuff like this when you can say are a species species you're talking about to that. Exactly, yeah. It's when they talk, species is a big one. If it's about animals, be ready for it to mix singular and plural in a way that strikes the ear a little bit wrong. But just know, the more you see some of those, and they've got quite a few in the official guide that are like that, and the official practice tests and stuff. When they talk about animals, you get away with a little bit more of this because you're kind of talking about them as representative of the species. The big problem is that this one mixes the verb tense a little bit, says they are currently emerging, but you're also talking about, why would you say also known as jackfish, right? It's sort of it's the whole sentence matters. If you're talking about a couple of individual fish, you'd also probably have to say the northern pike. If you're talking about a couple of them that are currently emerging, the meaning's off with the verb tense and just the way it's being described. So A's your right answer. That's how they pick these. And then where do they go? They definitely gave you a clue, because you could treat them as singular or plural just given the first couple of words. They give you that hard clue there. And so here's sort of the big lasting takeaways. There are a few places you can always look for, as you can always look, where you'll often find, you can always look and you'll often find those far away from the underline, but man, does that control something important. It's pronouns that control singular or plural. One thing you find as a GMAT tutor is very often you're doing a problem upside down, right? You're sitting across a desk from someone who's going through a problem on a worksheet or in the official guide or something like that. You're doing it upside down. And one thing I realized early on in my tutoring career was if there's a pronoun way away from the underline in the last few words of a sentence, I'm just going to, I got to be ahead of them. I'm struggling because I'm reading this problem upside down. I got a smart student that's reading it right side up, and I need to be ready to comment on it. That's where I found, wow, geez, you can do a lot of damage just looking for those pronouns. If you see singular versus plural, look for that. So that's a big one. Words that signal time. They love it if it's a verb tense type thing. You may start the sentence with since, which means, hey, it's an ongoing event, or from this date to another, or before or after, or something like that. It's way away from the underline, and they kind of figure out, people, it's part of a modifier, it's far away, people will scan past it. That tends to control time a lot. And then other big ones are if you've got a connector and a structural word, or which, and that, or in, or another preposition like that. That means that and or means, hey, we're treating two things as equivalent. And so they're going to have to be parallel. If you see and or with a connector after it, that, which, in, something like that, that a lot of times means, hey, wait a second, there's two things that need to be treated as parallel. Let me go back and see which of the answer choices treat the other, the one that's variable, the one that's underlined, or just what treats that as parallel to this. So those are three places that commonly they employ this tactic of, you're looking over here, and it's like pickpockets or something like that. It's like, you're looking over here, we're ripping you off over here. And so if you know that, and you kind of know, hey, I'm between a couple, I don't have a good decision ready to go. I'm not sure why I would say plural versus singular. Let me go all the way to the end and see, is there something that would do that? Or these two phrasings, I don't know, this one puts the noun first, this one puts the verb, I'm not sure which one I go look away. Hey, is there a structural component far from the underline that controls that? That's where they like to hide those clues from you. So it's another big lesson here. You'll see quite a few of those in practice. Here's another one. We're actually, you'll see this one, I'll give you a little bit of a hint, also has elements of the whole sentence matters in it. And it's where, I love this concept at the upper end. If you're aware of it and you find yourself scanning and not really thinking about why you would do something or what's the meaning, why is that whole first half of the sentence there, more is not underlined than is underlined. I'll give you that little bit of a hint. Again, let's take 90 seconds and we'll see what we can learn from this one. All right, how's everybody doing here? Not as much quick participation on this one as before. We're starting to get some answers here, starting to get some changes to answers here. Cool. Thank you guys for playing along with this one here. There are, cool, I'll kind of go, I'll slowly ease my way into it. If anybody, I think this is like on DVR kind of, you can pause and catch up too. If anybody was like, no, don't say anything. You can just hit pause and you'll be good. What I love about this one, this has so many things in it that we just talked about. It also has, if you look at our most popular answer is B, that's the most popular answer on the film. Let me double check, but I think I'm 99% sure as we'll get to the stats. And what really I think happens when people pick B, what were you looking for? What was your goal if you picked B? If anybody kind of has a succinct way of saying it, like I was looking for a sentence that blank. Because what we tend to hear from people a lot when they do pick B, and let me go out to, B is the most, so you guys are in line with the most common answer, and E just came in, that's the next most common wrong answer. And A is right, and so David, I think what people are looking for often in B, what they like is they see a list, right? They go operating rooms, an ophthalmology department, a pox area, and the largest vet clinic. They're just kind of looking for where does the and go, right? They see some of these others, and like with A, you've got and, right? And it's kind of like, oh, that's weird. There's two ands in there. You kind of look at any of these others. I think people's minds are primed toward, I just want one list with an and in it. All right? Well, couple things should stand out on this one. One, if it was that easy, that's why I say these hard ones punish scanners. If you're just sort of scanning from, hey, okay, where does the and go? Yeah, there's a list of items. I don't even care about the beginning of a sentence. Then, okay, well, who are they rewarding with this one? Why are we doing this in a, hey, we're going to see some hard problems, sentence correction session? And look at some of the other things that are going on that we talked about. So one, there's a lot of sentence beforehand. So the whole sentence matters is in play. And look at this. Remember what I mentioned before? That connector with an and, an or a but with a structural word, a to on the end of it. That tends to beg a little bit of parallelism, right? So even, I think Devin was mentioned, looking for some parallelism there, which is great. Look at what's going on here. We've got Riyadh is home to the world's largest hospital for falcons, a place where. So that modifier right there tells us everything that we start here with is talking about the hospital for falcons. So meaning matters. Let's read through what that does. What happens in the hospital for falcons? A place where falcons from all over the world are treated in operating rooms, an ophthalmology department, and a pox area. If you continue the list, what's the next thing? The largest vet clinic for desert mammals. If you're looking at what the meaning is, would you treat in a hospital for falcons? Would you have a vet clinic for desert mammals? Falcons are birds, mammals are not birds. And then if you continue that, and then if you want to go an and at the end of this, and a place, if you're looking for one list, a place where camels are expertly cared for, that's not going to be in a falcon hospital either. That's awesome. Nobody sees it. Perfect. So really what they're describing is Riyadh is home to two things. If we come back here, it's not one long list, it's two lists. The meaning tells us that, and the fact that we've got an and to, Riyadh is home to the world's largest hospital for falcons, and to the largest vet clinic for desert mammals. Now look, it even brings this modifier back in. It's the Saudi capital where people revere birds of prey, that's the falcon hospital, and enjoy camels, that's the desert mammal thing. It all comes back to the meaning, and so actually A is okay. This first list is falcons are treated in three places: operating rooms, an ophthalmology department, and a pox area. Cool, we're good there. And then Riyadh is also home to and to this largest vet clinic for desert mammals. And then look, we have a place where is the modifier for falcons, a place where is the modifier for camels. It's perfectly structured there. People scan this one and see a bunch of nouns, it's one list. If you go back and look at the meaning, it's 2 lists. It's Riyadh's home to this and to that, the Falcon Hospital and the Clinic for Mammals, and within each, one is a place where falcons are treated in X, Y, and Z, and the second is a place where camels are expertly cared for. So let me pause here. Does everybody see that? It's A, but scanners look at this one and just kind of go, oh, it's a list. I'm going to make it a parallel list. I'm going to just, where does the and go? I don't like that there's 2 ands there. And so what's your clue? The other thing I want to come out is, what's your clue that it's like this? Because some of these are just, hey, there's 5 items, put them in a list, connect them with an and you're good to go. If you're going to be planning on scoring, in the 650 plus range, with a good verbal score, you're trying to score high 30s into the 40s on your verbal scaled score. On an adaptive test, it's probably not going to be as easy at question 20 or 22 if you're doing well as just where does the and go in the list. So the other one is, if it looks easy, it doesn't mean that, maybe you're just good at this. But it's also where I think for me, I would slow down a little bit and like, wait a second, there's a lot more sentence here. Why would they write all of this sentence if it were just about where does the and go in the list? And then my other clues become that and to that's in some of these answer choices. Hey, that's a structural word, a connector with a structural word. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, why is this even here, right? And so that's the clues that they hide for you. One, I'm doing well. I think I should be, right? I'm planning to score high on the test. They wrote way more than they needed to if they're just testing this. I see a structural word with a connector, or connector and a structural word, and there's meaning in there. Let me go back and double check. Is this really one list, or is it 2 nested lists? Those are the clues that would tell me that. I want you guys to walk away with like, wow, that was one bizarre question that I wasn't ready for. How do you know it's going to be a bizarre question? Adaptive test, are you doing well? If so, hey, if they wrote way more than they needed to, that's a clue. You also start to see things like, hey, a place where and a place where. There's 2 modifiers that Sam is saying, there may be some parallelism going on there. And 2, connector and structural word. Those are the things you want to start to pick up on to tell you, I better go back and investigate a little bit further. And so, there are a few things to think about. Meaning really matters. Also, not to, again, belabor with story time, but we were at a meeting 5-6 years ago, I think, or so, with the guy who wrote the scoring algorithm for the GMAT, Dr. Rudner. And, we've been kind of close with him at some of these industry events and things. He actually consulted with Veritas Prep on our scoring algorithm, on our practice tests, which is really cool, talking shop with him. We were at the beginning of his GMAT test prep summit, and he found me and another guy who writes a lot of curriculum for us, and just kind of, was like, hey, you guys might find this interesting. A couple weeks ago, I was, at an event, I was talking to the people who write our sentence correction questions, and I was kind of asking them, like, hey guys, it's an international test. By now, way more than half of tests are taken outside of the United States than within it. Why are we testing standard English grammar? Like, why is there a grammar kind of section or question type on this test? And he says, what was cool was they came back to me and they said, no, it's not about arcane grammar, it's about meaning. And they started showing him questions like this. And so he's telling us this. He's like, guys, sentence correction is really cool. It's more reading comprehension than people realize. It's way less arcane grammar. It's really like, hey, if you look deeply at this sentence, does it have a logical meaning? Is it structured in a way where it's clear what the meaning is? Like, that's really what it's all about. And it was great. And then he kind of went to the rest of the room and was talking about, you can tell some people were receptive to it, some were a little bit scared, but meaning matters is, I guess, the point of it. Even the guy in charge of the GMAT at the time was almost surprised at how much it's more reading comprehension than pure grammar. And so look at that, and again, here the whole sentence matters. If you're doing well on the test and it seems a little bit easy, you may want to go back and just kind of consider, hey, wait a second, does this mean what it's supposed to? Would one thing I go back to a lot, or we tell students to go back to is, would someone really write this sentence, right? Would somebody really write a list of items for falcons that include camel and other desert mammals? If not, you may want to go back and like, hey, am I missing the meaning that's there? So anyway, maybe belaboring a little bit, but here's some clues to look for and recognize they've designed it as the test has evolved. And that's where, the more recent official materials, more recent practice tests and things, they have more of the current flavor of sentence correction. If you find like an official guide, 12th edition, that was published in 1999, there was more arcane grammar back in the 1980s and 90s. There are still questions out there that are a little bit weird grammar. Over time, it's evolved to be more about reading comprehension, and so more than ever, this stuff really matters. And then one last thing, statistically this is going to be the easiest question we do here, but I'd feel remiss if I just didn't show you guys, there's some free points waiting for you on this test, and if you know what they are and how to get them, you can save a lot of time, turn off your brain, be done pretty quickly. So let's go a minute on this one. There's less to read and all that. We'll wrap up after this, but I want to show you guys the technique for questions like this once you've had a chance to engage in it that just really makes your job way easier and kind of hands you a couple of free points. All right, interesting. Yeah, I was wondering, because a lot of people picked B on the last one. I was kind of looking at some of those here. So, interesting. Okay, cool. That's, cool. We should update that. Actually, get it in check. That's awesome. And where is that? No, I mean, all of that. Chat for anybody watching on tape delay. If the chat's not up, she's saying it actually is after 8th grade. So cool. The more you know in some of these. Here's where there's a specific set of two-part constructions. It's either or, neither nor, both and, just as, so, and not only but also. Well, I've got those coming up on a slide here, so you don't have to memorize all those. We'll show you those. But if you see one of those common two-part constructions, either this or that, both this and that, not only X, but also Y, all those constructions, there's a trick that's pretty cool you can use, which is just if you stop reading at the beginning of the structure. So here we've got an either or. Trick you can use on these, which really you're testing parallel. The rule is they have to be perfectly parallel with each other so that the two items are kind of in exactly the same form, right? And so one trick you can use to make sure it's parallel is just stop reading it either and then start reading after nor, right? So if we were to do that here, you could say across much of Western Europe, compulsory education ends after 9th grade. When students can choose and stop reading it either, pick up after, or, and you've got and a vocational path. That doesn't, it's redundant. You have two articles there, you can't have that. What this is really showing us is that, hey, the article exists outside of the either or structure, so you don't need an extra one within it. That's the reason it's not parallel and it's kind of broken. But if you stop reading at the first word of that structure, at either or at both or at neither or as not only, and pick up right after that structure, it needs to be a complete thought all the way across, and if it's not, it's wrong. And so in this case, if we stop reading at either, pick up after or, we've got can choose and a vocational path. Dead wrong. Do the same thing here with B, pop your answer, after which students can, we stop reading it either, pick up after or, after which students can, a vocational path. Not a complete sentence because they can do something with a vocational path, but can a vocational path is gone. C, when students can either, so we stop reading there, and then pick up after or. When students can a vocational path, same problem. When we get to D, when students can choose either an academic, or, so students can choose, let's get rid of either, students can choose a vocational path. D is right. And then E has, I think, the same problem, can choose either from, The problem with E, so actually it doesn't entirely work on E, right? After which students can choose actually it doesn't have an A on it, right? So yeah, it doesn't have an A, that's what I was saying. E, the answer E came in as I was doing that. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on there? After which students can choose vocational path, you're missing an article there. So, so that's the problem with E. So the only one that works is D, and really all we're doing with this trick is testing, is it parallel, right? Is it parallel? Do both structures have what they need to be a complete sentence and a complete thought? As a trick there, it's pretty terrific. You just stop reading at the first structure, finish up after the first word of the structure, finish up after the or, the second kind of connector word there. If it's not a perfect sentence, if it doesn't make sense all the way across, you're done with it. And at that point, it becomes pretty easy in that case. And so yeah, I found that too. It was actually like most of the best strategies. As a student that showed me that like 7 or 8 years ago, and I was trying to teach it. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You can just do it. And I did it on, you know, as many official problems I can find. I'm like, yeah, it always works. And the reason is you're really just testing what's outside of the construction. So like the word choose, if it's outside of the construction, then you don't need it in both. If it's after either, like it is in C, then you need it in both. Then it's not parallel if you don't have the verb. So really you're just testing for that, but it's an easy way to kind of turn your brain off. If you look at the stats, it's not an insanely hard problem, but about a third of people miss it, and they just pick, I think in this case, a lot of us picked B, a lot of them picked B. It's such an avoidable error because there is a quick lens to hold it up against. And you know, here it's like, man, you could have been done with this thing in 30 seconds and move on knowing you're right. I feel bad when people miss it because you know, it's just like, hey, if you know what you're doing, it's fast, it's easy. And most people see one of these structures on the test, at least one. So these are a handful of structures. There's also, I missed one on here, not only but also is the other one. If you see these structures, hold it up to that lens, use that technique, and you're done pretty quickly. Now, you won't always get all 4. This one's cool because you get all 4 wrong answers out with that one. Sometimes there's 2 left remaining or 3. You hold it up to that lens. If you see one of these structures, you'll always get rid of 1. It's weird if you don't get rid of 2. Very often you'll get rid of 3 or 4 answer choices just with that trick, and then you're off to the races there. And then again, kind of going back to the beginning, say you only eliminate 2, those 2 might have been the ones you would have kept around that would have been kind of like the answer choice C in that first Kant one that was sort of the one, well, I like this you know, idiomatic structure, I like this a little bit better. These are the kind of things that help you eliminate the ones that you would have had a weird debate on. It's concrete, they've got to be parallel. So if you hold it up to this test and it doesn't work, it's definitely wrong. At that point, you know, you've got, you know, you're just done with a lot of answer choices. Decision fatigue is done, you're faster, and you get more problems right. Cool. So that's where we've been on this one, sentence correction. You know, want to do, you know, hopefully a pretty meaningful, you know, 45-minute or so session for you guys. Make out a couple minutes over. So let's look at where we've been and you know, encourage you guys to get some practice with these. Don't just, you know, watch this and then move on. Find some practice with this. I'll give you a couple suggestions on where you can do that. Remember, to me, the headline is number 1. There's some tricks and things that you should watch out for that are cool, but your greatest asset is you pick the order you make decisions in, and so prioritize the stuff you're really good at. Like that last one, if I ever see the word either or only in a question, I always go and deal with that stuff first because then I'm not making hard decisions. Even if it's halfway through the answer choices and they, you know, it seems like they want me to make another decision, not go to the stuff you're really good at. So that's a huge headline. The whole sentence matters, particularly if you're doing really well. You know you're going to be doing really well. You're going into the test thinking it's an adaptive test. I'm supposed to be getting above a 600. I'm supposed to be getting above a 700. Well, shoot, in that case, if I'm going to make an easy decision, let me go back and make sure there's not anything in the sentence that I didn't, you know, the non-underlined portion that I overlooked. Or if you're struggling between 2 answer choices, go back and be like, hey, is there something way away from the underline that makes this a crystal clear decision as opposed to a preference decision? remember that meaning matters. If you're just kind of scanning for symptoms of, like, I think it's just going to be this. If you ever go through a whole sentence and never once considered what the content of it was, you might want to go back and check out some of that. And then these free points with that common construction is great. So awesome. Thank you guys for awesome. Thank you. I love the factual stuff on this. I think that one came from something we read somewhere. I think that was like, it was right somewhere. We may have extended it a little more broadly across the EU. So thank you for that. I love, actually weird tangent on that one, and then I'll do an official wrap up, is one time I went to, in Los Angeles here, I went to a taping of Jeopardy with some friends. Just I wasn't on it, but I was like in the audience. And I was just kind of whispering to them, like, I got like 7 or 8 questions that were kind of hard on Double Jeopardy right, and people are looking like, how do you know all this stuff? And I had to realize at one point, I go, I think it's all from GMAT books. It's from sentence correction stuff I've read that's factually true. One reading count passage is just kind of like, it was amazing that the random knowledge you pick up from doing all this stuff. So thanks for helping us clean that one up. So I mentioned you guys want to get some practice on this. Couple things worth looking into. One is Veritas Prep has a new product out called Orion, which is adaptive self-study, tons of great practice. Some of these problems you would see in there, and then plenty of others. If you go to the Veritas Prep site and then kind of click through to, there's a 15-day free trial. You can get a ton of practice done in there. So one thing to check out is this product Orion. Another one is if you guys like this and want a little bit more, I'm going to be standing right here against this board starting on Tuesday. We've got a advanced course, so kind of a quick course, all advanced strategies, all stuff for people aiming to score above 700 that feel comfortable with 600 level content. So if you're interested, it starts on Tuesday, and I'm pretty excited about it. And it was fun kind of going through. This was some of the stuff we're covering in some of those lessons. I was picking some of the highlights for this. So if you guys want to be back here in a classroom like this, take a look at the website. We've got a class starting on Tuesday that I'm fired up about teaching. So. But enough about me. Thank you guys for joining from wherever. We got some cool chime-ins later. Sweden just checked in. We're learning about compulsory education in the EU from some others. So thank you guys for all your participation, and best of luck to everybody. I hope to see some of you guys back with me here on Tuesday. So thanks everybody.